Last minute shakeup at 5:30 a.m., laundry situation not good. And when your focus is on helping your clients, it's easy to forget about yourself. But NASM knows trainers.
Morning, Ryan. It's okay.
And staying in front of the day isn't always
Thanks,
as simple
Ryan.
as 1,
What's
2,
up?
3. So when the unexpected has you pressing pause,
What's the latest on creatine?
I'm going to get back to you on that.
let NASM1 help you press play. Visit NASM.org to sign up for a membership today.
You're listening to Random Fit with hosts Wendy Batts and Ken Miller, winner of a Gold Markham Award for Digital Media.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Random Fit. I am Wendy Batts here with my friend and co-host, Ken Miller. Ken, how are you?
I'm good, Wendy. How you doing? You're looking good and well rested. What are you doing?
Oh,
What are
wow.
you doing to keep
Thanks.
your face so young and wrinkle-free?
Yeah, well, I'm not feeling that way, so maybe it's the camera on me today, but let me digress. Today, we have a very special guest returning to our podcast. We have Kat Barefield joining us today, and we are going to be talking specifically about creatine. Those of you guys that are new listening to Random Fit and do not know Kat, Kat is the VP of Nutrition Services at .fit, and she's also one of our strongest registered dietitians that we lean on heavily, especially when it comes to the world of nutrition. So I'm super excited to bring Kat on. So let's have Kat coming in and talking about separating fact from fiction when we're talking about creatine. So, Kat.
Let's do it. Hey guys, so happy to be here with you today. We got a lot to talk about, don't we?
We do.
Yeah. Especially about this supplement, creatine, because I mean, for one, it's something that I've been taking, and you and I, Kat, when we used to work together decades now, we say decades. It's something I started taking when we first started working together, and then because I'm working with so many kids now, high school, junior high, the question comes up from the kids and from the parents, is this something that I should do or my kid should do? So basically, Kat, what is creatine and how does it work in the body, just so we can get that on the table?
Yeah, so that's a good place to start. Now, I know when people think creatine, they automatically think supplements, and they don't realize that creatine is a natural substance. You can get it through the diet, mostly red meat, seafoods, some poultry, and your body also makes creatine from amino acids. So, our body makes the substance, and the reason why is because it's needed as an energy source, primarily by muscle tissues, but also by the brain. So creatine is natural. Most of it's stored in your muscle tissue, and most of the research is done in muscle. And that research is quite strong, which is one of the reasons why it's such a popular supplement. You have a follow-up question to that, or is that a good enough sort of description?
I actually have one. When you're talking about this, because our body naturally makes it, as you were just saying, can you talk a little bit about the benefits? So when you're thinking about the athletic population and fitness enthusiasts that are getting into a program, they just automatically, which I was one of these people until I learned a little bit more about creatine, would think, well, if I took creatine, all it's going to do is make me bigger. And so if you could kind of go into a little bit more about the process, what are the benefits of it? And why would I see some sort of change in the way that I'm looking if I'm doing a creatine before a workout?
Right. Okay, so let's take a sort of a step back, right? All metabolic reactions require energy in the form of ATP. So let's go way back. And our body has a lot of different ways to make ATP. We have a few seconds worth laying around in our cells. And then we have different systems that create ATP, right? We have the ATP-PC system, also referred to as a glycolytic system, that creates energy with high intensity, high effort activities, whether it's sprinting, jumping, etc. And then we have our aerobic system, which also uses carbohydrates and fats to make ATP. So typically, if you're a meat eater, you consume a few maybe 1 gram or so from your diet. If you're a vegan or vegetarian, you consume none, right? So it makes sense that if you're a meat eater, you have some stored in your muscle tissue. And what the research has shown is that supplementation to the tune of around 3 to 5 grams or so can increase muscular stores of creatine by around 20% in meat eaters, more so in vegans and vegetarians, around 40%. So when you have more energy, right, and that creatine is stored in muscles, most of it as creatine phosphate. Phosphate is a component of ATP. You now have the ability to regenerate energy, or ATP, at a high level. So that translates to what? More high intensity training in the gym, which again helps your muscles get stronger, more powerful, etc. So it's not just about being bigger. I think that misconception, or not even a misconception, but initially, for the most part, when you consume creatine, it draws water into your muscle cells. And so, yes, you can see a transient increase, short-term increase in weight gain, fluid retention. People might feel bigger as well.
That's a great point, Kat, because that's again bringing up the kids that I work with, maybe some of the younger adults, males. That winds up being their goal, and for some, I mean, every body is different, right? So some might see an immediate kind of change. Again, to your point, based on your diet, based on your hydration, how your body reacts to how you take creatine or when you take creatine is going to be different. And so your famous phrase with us is "it depends,"
It
right? So
depends.
I find myself saying that. It's like the cat flashbacks in my head. It depends. So that initial body composition or initial weight change is something that I've had to address when it comes to the size, because Bobby's looking at Johnny's putting on 3 more pounds of weight on the scale than him. So the idea of, okay, well, how hydrated were you? What were you doing? Now, Kat, Wendy mentioned the whole loading phase. I remember when I first started taking creatine, it was for the first week and a half. You want to do your 20 grams of creatine to load. Is that a thing now? Is that research still supporting that initial onboarding of creatine into your programming? Is that still something that we need to do?
It's not needed. So, it was sort of initially, it was, that was the way to go, because you can rapidly increase creatine stores if you did the loading phase. And to your point, the loading phase is 20 grams a day for the first 5 to 7 days. And those 20 grams were split up into 4 dosages a day. So you could get a rapid increase, and therefore you could get the benefits of creatine. But later research, and now we know, is that nobody really needs to do that unless you're training at a high level or competing at a high level and you want the benefits right away. But everyone else can take it slow. So 3 to 5 grams a day can be taken, or you can dose it based on your weight. And so that number is 0.04 grams per pound of body weight per day. And you can take that for about a month. And then you can saturate your muscle tissues about a month later. Of course, the benefits associated with it as well take a little bit longer than if you were to load it. So either way is fine. Totally up to you whether or not you want to do it. But disclaimer, some people, especially initially with the 20 grams a day, it can cause a little bit of stomach upset and GI distress. So if that's you can do 2 things. You can split it up to even smaller dosages throughout the day, or you can just go the slow way. So either way
Kat,
is going to be beneficial.
I live with someone that does nothing besides research. I feel half of the time when he's like working, he's reading something like, "Oh, did you know?" And of course, creatine came up in our household, and he was like, "You've got to start taking creatine, Wendy. This is going to be good for you." And of course, not knowing a lot about it when we started initially talking about it, I'm thinking the benefits of what's going to happen to my muscles and what's happening at the gym. So aesthetically, creatine, what it's going to do for my body. And he's like, no. Like, I'm talking about creatine for the brain. and what it would do to help the brain. So again, when I first started it, I was the person that felt bloated and big. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel puffy. Like, I don't know. It was just something that maybe it was more psychological. So there are people that never have that. My husband never had that. And we were doing the same thing. But can you talk about creatine and the brain? Because I was like, I can't do it. Like, I can't fit into my clothes. I just felt big. So, but he's like, you need this for your brain. So what is the latest on creatine and brain health?
Yeah, so this is a super exciting area. Obviously, the data is emerging, more and more studies are being conducted. So, physiologically, what we know is that about 5% of your total body creatine is stored in your brain, and that most of the research has shown some benefit under stressful conditions for the brain. So, things like sleep deprivation, or traumatic brain injury, or even in the elderly, as we know, as we are finding out, as you get older, things start to get less efficient throughout our body. And so the dosages for benefits in the brain tend to be higher, because the thought process is 95% of your muscles will take up the creatine. And so you need more to show an increase in brain stores. And once again, if you're sleep deprived, I think the study was, 30-gram dosage showed maybe improvements in cognitive function under conditions of sleep deprivation. There's been a study, at least I know of one study, maybe there's a few more done on, I believe it was women in depression, also taking medication for depression, took creatine and saw some improvements in symptoms as well. And then more of the research is coming out on brain disease and aging, like Alzheimer's, et cetera. So, we don't know yet. It's more like it's showing a lot of promise in terms of brain benefits. But right now, like I said, mostly primarily under stressful conditions.
Huh. So maybe he's saying something. Maybe there's a reason.
There is a definite reason that he has good cause for telling you that, because
I can't remember anything.
Yeah, right. But even like with muscle, like, as we know, the fourth decade of life is when we start losing muscle tissue. So perhaps, in addition to benefits on muscle and age-related muscle tissue loss, there's some age-related brain function that could also be helpful with creatine supplements.
Man, now I've got to go online and start ordering more creatine, because I got to up my 5 grams a day now to 30, I think. I don't know. We'll see.
No, don't do that. Don't do that. Unless you're sleep deprived, then you might see some
Well,
benefit.
I think, there you go. I'll check off that box as well. Now, before I ask you the next question, Kat, I just want to read a little bit of announcement here regarding NASM 1. This episode of Random Fit is brought to you by NASM 1, the membership for trainers and coaches. Members enjoy unlimited access to hundreds of career resources. Get the Edge app to schedule and program clients. Enjoy half off all certification specializations, access free CEUs, and more. All this for just $35 a month. Go to nasm.org/membership to learn more about NASM 1. So Kat, with all the upside, right? There's got to be something that, when it comes to take creatine as part of your daily intake, what if any are the risks that you know of regarding taking creatine?
So obviously we talked about a little bit of that intramuscular water retention, which is, again, it's beneficial from a muscle physiology standpoint, because you're getting some signaling that's happening with helping with muscle. In terms of risk, it's primarily in people with pre-existing or family history of kidney or liver dysfunction or disease. So that's where the biggest risk is. And we don't even really know if it's really risky or has adverse effects. So it's something to talk to about your doctor, meaning that there could be a benefit, and it just hasn't been studied yet. But because when you consume creatine, everything gets filtered through your kidneys. And so, the byproduct of creatine utilization is creatinine. And on a blood test, if you show elevated levels, then your doctor might think you're, going into kidney failure or something like that. So you want to talk to your doctor if you are going to get those blood tests done. And if you do have existing or family history of kidney or liver disease, then have a discussion with your doctor as well about that. There's emerging research in pregnant women as well. So I'm excited to see if there's going to be any benefit in pregnancy. So I mean, I really, honestly, the consensus is that creatine is the safest and most effective performance enhancing supplement on the market, more so than caffeine. So four decades worth of research, long-term studies, randomized control, placebo-controlled trials. And now we're getting into brain benefits as well as bone. Did we talk about bone yet? And so we're talking about an aging, something that could help with longevity potentially. And, our aging population is rapidly growing. So I think with some benefits on bone, there's at least 1-2 year trial in postmenopausal women that shows some benefit in preserving bone. In addition with exercise, of course, because all these studies are done in exercise. So you can't, I wouldn't expect to see a ton of these benefits without hitting the gym. But it's exciting, you guys. I hope we have this conversation, in the future and talk about the new data that shows up.
So on that note, then, if you're talking about, let's say, postmenopausal female who is taking creatine, they can lift more weights, so more resistance, more tension on the tendons, ligaments, and the muscles, which now pulls more onto the bones, and now the bones have more of a stimulus to increase density, is basically the thought process on that.
So yes, definitely that. But also, if you look a little closer, the bone cells, remember there's osteoblasts that build bone and osteoclasts that break. So the bone cells, osteoblasts, actually use creatine as a fuel source. And so, you need calcium and phosphate transporters to actually take calcium out of the blood, phosphate out of the blood, and deposit it into bone. And those transporters require energy, and they use creatine, and you see increased activity. So scientists, they just blow my mind, the stuff that they're able to see, and how our body works.
Well, we need these guys. That's why we have these conversations.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. And today on Random Fit, myself, Wendy Batts, and Ken Miller have our very special guest, Kat Barefield, who is our registered dietitian. I say ours because she is one of our NASM Master Instructors that talks specifically about nutrition. And she is a VP of Nutrition Services at .fit. And we are talking about creatine. And she's helping us separate fact from fiction. So super blessed to have her on today. But Kat, that kind of, when we're talking about the elderly population, we're seeing more and more, like you said, maybe this is something that's going to help someone with osteopenia, osteoporosis. But can you go back about our youth, because I am also getting more and more parents talking to me about it. I am seeing people obviously at the collegiate level that I know are starting to supplement and implement this into their plan. But how young is young?
Okay. Yeah.
When do we start?
So, yeah. I mean, I would say right off the bat, probably 16 is okay to start with, sort of, later adolescent years. But as you guys know, in a lot of these exercise related research studies, who are they recruiting and getting people to participate in the studies? It's mostly young males. So, getting it studied in young athletes is difficult, and I don't believe has been done yet. But probably 16. I mean, again, creatine has a great safety profile. I would say low dosage is going to increase their muscular stores if they're not eating a carnivore diet, right? And that can potentially be beneficial, especially if they're training at high intensity levels, which a lot of youth athletes are. They train so much nowadays, and they're lifting weights at an earlier age. So, I think it's probably safe at 16 or so, but have that conversation have them discuss it with their parents, maybe pull in their doctor. You want to be, mindful of of all the players involved in this situation. But I know kids are very, very, excited to try to get an edge.
Now, with that, I'm going to kind of revert back to the other question that we asked before about, young, right? But you also made the comment about it's young males. So, I mean, I've got a daughter who's athletic. She's doing volleyball, water polo. She's not 16 quite yet, but when it comes to bone density, that's one of the things the pediatrician says, let's look at, stay active, something running, jumping, impact, make sure the calcium intake is there. But just to kind of feed off of what you're just talking about now with osteoblasts and osteoclasts and how creatine plays a role. Is that something then, if you're a younger female and you have bone density, that should be on the forefront of your mind when it comes to long-term health and longevity? Is that something then that we should probably pay more attention to as a parent, selfishly asking now, regarding my daughter and her activities and her long-term health when it comes to bone density, but also being competitive as an athlete also?
Well, it's certainly wise of you as a parent to, make sure they're adequately nourished to optimize their bone health. Whether or not we know that creatine's going to make a difference to, developing bone in females, I don't believe the study has been done yet. But I would say focus on the major movers. So for as you know, right, bone, you can build bone until maybe mid to late 20s. And so what are the nutrients that are important in bone? It's not just calcium. You also need adequate levels of vitamin D to absorb that calcium. So I would check vitamin D levels. That's a very easy thing to do at the doctor's office. And then I would also optimize protein intake. So protein intake is also important for bone health. So I would look at those things: calcium, vitamin D, potentially omega-3s are important for muscle and bone as well. And there are tons of brain benefits for omega-3s. And like I said, make sure you focus on those areas along with protein. And then creatine might be some sprinkles on top, if any, but we just don't know yet in young women. I don't believe those studies have been done. I could be wrong. Maybe they're out, but I haven't seen them.
Well, Kat, then can you talk to us? Are there different types of creatine, and is there one that's better than another? Like, especially when we're thinking about effectiveness and which is going to be the best for either our youth and or our seniors and everyone in between.
I'm so glad you asked that. Right. I mean, you see all these different marketing ads, creatine hydrochloride is more bioavailable, creatine ethyl ester, blah, 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 on and on. It's creatine monohydrate, maybe 1,000 studies or so. It's creatine monohydrate overwhelmingly is the most evidence-based. It's highly, almost 100% of it gets into your system. There's no need to pay extra money for buffered creatine, for micronized, none of that. Creatine monohydrate, people. Okay. Now that leads me to another question I get, which is like, what's the best way? What's the timing around it? Did we talk about that already? Am I forgetting?
No, go for it, girl.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, really, believe it or not, what the research says is that probably consistency is the most important factor, right? Now, just like, exercise, what do we get with exercise? It increases the activity of the GLUT4 transports in the muscle tissue, helps clear blood glucose. Well, the same thing for creatine. So maybe some benefit around taking your creatine around exercise, whether that's before, whether that's during, whether that's after. But the bottom line is pick a time that you can be consistent. If it's around exercise, that's probably a bit better. And there may be some synergy with protein. I mean, if you think about it, creatine is naturally present in protein sources like meat and fish. So there might be some synergy there as well. So, if you're taking a protein shake, whey protein or whatever, might be convenient and easy for you to throw those two together. And so you get, sort of a 2-for-1 to help optimize protein and optimize creatine. And please don't let me go on a rant about protein and how the, abysmal RDAs are, especially for older individuals. But I don't believe anybody, is going to have optimal muscle metabolism with the current RDA at a 0.36 grams per pound. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, people, we need to government, we need to update this, right?
Now,
Tell me how you really feel.
yeah. I was gonna say, so Kat, I know we've talked about macronutrients before. So since you brought it up,
Yes.
what are the numbers for recommended protein intake?
Okay. So like I said, the RDA, let's just really back up real quick. The RDA, recommended dietary allowance, they were formed based on minimum amounts to prevent deficiency in healthy, mostly adult males. So that is 0.8 grams per kilogram, or in the United States, it's 0.36 grams per pound. So I believe it's like 56 grams if you're like a 150-pound male. Excuse me? Like, that is not optimal. That might prevent deficiency in young males, right? So, but not for optimizing muscle metabolism. That optimal amount is closer to 0.7 grams per pound, especially if you're exercising in resistance training on a daily basis, right? And then there's some studies that, it shows that it could be beneficial in higher amounts, particularly if you're restricting calories and, looking to reduce body fat. So, and it's completely safe. It's just like creatine. Like all the myths around creatine have pretty much been debunked. Like, it doesn't cause any organ damage. It doesn't cause dehydration. It's not a steroid. It doesn't cause hair loss. There was like one study that showed it increased a metabolite of testosterone, but hair loss was never measured. So I can't emphasize. I don't say this about any other supplement, because creatine monohydrate, 4 decades of research, 1,000 different studies under various populations. Not only is it good for muscle, but now we're seeing it could be beneficial for aging brain, aging bone, etc. Okay. Can I drop the mic now, please?
Yeah. So that study on the hair loss and creatine, I was never asked to be a part of any study, so hopefully.
Well, and that's the thing, is that no one's ever really studied it. When you look at the 2-year studies on creatine, nobody reports losing hair, right? And nobody's like measuring hair loss.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's debunked.
Who are you going to tell anyway? It's like, hey, I'm losing my hair, and I take 5 grams of creatine a day.
Well, in the studies, the participants could certainly report it, right? When you're in these research studies, you could report it as a side effect, but it's just not seen. Yeah. What other myths have you guys heard of? Any other myths that you could think of? Women are like, oh, I'm going to get gigantic. First of all, okay, you don't have enough testosterone to get gigantic. Like, no. And secondly, you want to retain muscle as you age, especially after menopause, when your estrogen tanks. Guess what else tanks? Not tanks, but guess what else deteriorates rapidly? Bone, right? Well, to your point, Ken, what helps to maintain bone or build bone? Tension from muscle tissue. So women, if you're, first of all, strength train. Okay. Second of all, eat adequate protein. Third of all, consider creatine for bone health and muscle health. We want everyone healthy, aging at a healthy rate and a healthy way, if you will. We don't want people to be dysfunctional and decrepit and having to have family members take care of them, right? Okay, I'll stop.
That is not on my list, just so you know.
What happens? That's what happens. Age-related disability mostly is related to muscle function and falls and fractures. That's what happens. We get weaker. We deteriorate if we don't stress the body.
Yes. So, Kat, my final question that I have is basically, because we could talk creatine and we can see you're passionate about it, so we can keep you on here all day. However, if you wanted to give us the key takeaways, what do you think those should be for our listeners? If you needed to wrap up our whole session, what would you say as our kind of leave behind?
Okay, you can't get any benefit. I shouldn't say any. you probably won't get any benefit from creatine if you're not in the gym or you're not doing some type of resistance training and exercise. So first and foremost, I think everyone agrees, exercise is the fountain of youth, right? And then nutrition sort of makes the water like amazing, if you will. So get in the gym, train on a regular basis. I would say optimal 3 days a week, resistance train, minimal 2 days a week. And then to optimize muscle metabolism, make sure you are getting, 0.7 grams per pound protein, and then consider creatine as a way to maximize your workouts in terms of training intensity and potentially benefiting your brain and your bone.
There you
Done
have
deal.
it.
Perfect. All right, Kat. Always great to see you. You're looking awesome as always. Thanks for the download on creatine and separating fact from fiction. So, Kat, can't wait to have you on again for another episode of Random Fit. So, you take care until next time, Kat.
Thanks, guys.
Yes, bye, Kat.
Bye.
All right. So for all of you that have listened to us, both Wendy Batts and I, Ken Miller, and our special guest, Kat Barefield, on this episode of Random Fit, thank you so much for your time and listening to the fun facts of separating facts and fiction on creatine. If you like what you heard, like, follow, subscribe, download, and share. Spread the good word as far as what we have to share on Random Fit. But let us know if there's something else you want us to talk about on future episodes. So until next time, everybody, take care and be well.